man.
You ought to know. Do-do-what-it-up, men's radio. Do-do-what-it-up, the place where men and women really speak. Do-do-what, do-do-do-what. Oh man, what a show. Do-do-what-it-up, it's men's radio. Do-do-what-it-up, this crazy show is on 3 times a week. Do-do-what, do-do-do-what. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. And radio, that's the place for you. With Russ, Kane, and Phil Dave.
Marvellous. You're so brave, Phil. You're brave because you're a brave little trooper. A brave little
missing
trooper.
Here. What am I missing? What I don't normally.
You're missing
you
the
don't
fact
normally
that
compliment me.
You've got man flu. You've got man flu.
Oh,
it's not a cold.
You're talking about the man flu. Oh, I see. All right, it's tail end of man flu. I'm all right. I'm hanging on in there.
No, you're a trooper. Listen, we've got to
Yes,
guess.
well, I have to obviously answer the cries of the adoring public and couldn't possibly neglect them. So
no, right. You got a fever?
No.
We don't normally have guests on a Friday, but I'm making an exception today because this is something I totally believe in. It's a very important subject for us on the Daily Show. Phil and I talk about it a lot off air as well when we're. Hey, guess who's coming into the Whiskey Club tonight? Guess who's coming in? Tonight?
You.
No. I've met him before. I've had some. He's just a great guy. You've heard of Jim Beam, right? You heard of Jim Beam?
Yes.
The rye. Jim Beam. Yeah.
Yes.
He's the last male member of the Beam family, Stephen Beam, coming into the Whiskey Club tonight. Fantastic. Right, from things jolly to things not so jolly. What a fabulous segue. No wonder I'm a top pro. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Matt Williams. Hi, Matt.
Hi there. Nice to be with you. Thank you.
Now, Matt, as your title says on screen, Head of Information and Support at Marie Curie. So first and foremost, if I may just say, I find it an honor to speak to anyone who works at Marie Curie. I think it is such a phenomenal organization. And I am not just saying that just because you're here. It's just because I have huge admiration.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you.
No, I echo Phil's sentiments completely, actually. Completely. So tell us, there's a new initiative, or is there something general that you just want to talk about?
Yeah, there is. So we've done a bit of polling, and we found that over 20 million adults in the UK wouldn't know what support is available to them at the end of their life. They wouldn't know where to turn. They wouldn't know what to do, and we really want to do something about it. So it's great to be with you today, and I'd like to tell you that we've just launched a brand new guidebook with rough guides. So obviously the well-known travel publisher, we've produced the first end-of-life guidebook in the UK. So it's available for a free download. And hopefully it'll help people through these really, really difficult times.
No, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. The truth of when you hear something like end of life guide, I can't imagine people, no offense, I don't imagine people are going to go and rush to buy it or anything or get their hands on a copy, because it doesn't necessarily fill one with confidence at the prospect of having to think about end of life. But it's strange how we have a really bad attitude towards the fact that the only certainty in this world is that one day we are all going to not be here anymore.
That's
but we just have a bad attitude towards it. Why do you think that is?
I think it's still a taboo, isn't it? We don't like talking about it. We don't like talking to family members. You know, even before someone's ill, certainly when they're ill, you don't want to, don't talk about that. Don't worry about that. But actually, it's really important. And, you know, even practical things like, you know, funeral plans or what sort of care plans, you know, where you'd want to be. Would you want to be in the house? Would you want to be in a hospital or whatever? It's really important to talk about this stuff. So we just want to encourage the conversation, really, and to reassure people that organizations like Marie Curie are there with you every step of the way, whatever the illness, wherever you are in the UK. You don't have to do this alone. It's a tough conversation. As you said, it's maybe not the most exciting subject that people want to get to straight away, but it's such an important subject. It's arguably the most important.
But you know what, Matt? As Jim Morrison of The Doors once said, and you're much too young to know who I'm referring to, he said, no one here gets out alive.
Yeah,
he started every concert with that. No one here gets out alive. And it's true, but it's fascinating how, as you've already said quite rightly, it's still a taboo.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it shouldn't be, because what happens is, and help me out here because you're the expert, I'm just going through personal experience, is that it puts the onus too much on the family.
Yeah.
And they don't know. They may
Yeah.
not know what your wishes are or what your wishes were.
Yeah,
So it's really important to get these things out. Yeah, it's not a pleasant conversation, but it has to be had. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm sure we've all got personal experience of that. I certainly have, when you're not really sure what to do, and actually you think, well, would they have wanted this? Would they have wanted that? And having that conversation earlier on in that kind of journey, as people call it, it can really help everyone, and it can help families when that loved one has gone. Yeah, exactly. And it sort of strikes me when you come in.
This is my cousin, Matt. This is my cousin. So I just want, sometimes when you're working in an organization, you don't always know the impact you've had. Let me read this out. This is from my cousin Francine. Amazing people and support. She's referring to you and Marie Curie. My father, that was my Uncle Sam, was at the end of his life there. They are all angels.
Oh, thank you.
Doesn't get
I'm glad
better
we could be
than
there.
that, Matt.
No, it doesn't. So we're really privileged to be able to care for people throughout the country, and it's an honor to be there and support people through those most difficult times.
Can't help but think, though, that the nurses must have to have the most immeasurable amount of support, because they're clearly going through a very emotional job day in, day out, so actually sort of just helping families through the worst of times. And yet, of course, they're the ones who are there to be strong. Well, the way I look at it is that strength comes from others. It's not just a case of plonking a nurse into that situation and saying, okay, you are a rock, therefore you have no emotions, you can take anything on the chin. What kind of support is there for the people who work at Marie Curie?
That's a really great question. It's so important that we support our staff. You're quite right. They're there, every day or every night with an individual, and they get to know those people really well and get to know the family, and it can affect them as well as when that person dies. So we've got lots of support internally. We have various sort of things in place to support our nurses and healthcare assistants to make sure that they're cared for as well, that they feel supported. And as from a team perspective, as you said, it isn't just one individual. We have a great team around all of our caring staff to make sure that they're in the right place, they're supported, and that they can talk and they can reflect and really take that emotion and recognize it, that there's no need to be that rock, as you said. I think it's absolutely fine to show your emotions, and make sure that we show others that it's okay as well.
This is the thing, though. Everybody is human, and we all need support. It was interesting. I've just become a celebrant, so obviously funerals will be a big part of what I do. And part of the training, of course, was dealing with especially what they call difficult deaths. Babies, children, people who've ended their own lives. Those are, if Auntie Flo's got to 103, it's sad, but she's 103, pretty good innings. But if it's very untimely or a difficult death, it's important that you can't take on that grief. So Phil's question to you is very, very important. Very important.
Thank you. Talk us through about this end of life guide, though, because that's what you're here to talk about, and we want to know more about this. So what sort of comes in that? So is it a case of it's a booklet? Is it a proper sort of full-on thick book that people have to read cover to cover? Does it have a glossary? Do you know what I mean? What's the structure of it?
So it's structured very similar to how you'd find a rough guidebook. So it's split into sections, and you don't have to read it cover to cover. You might just go to the section that's relevant for you at the time, and it takes you through that essentially journey of end of life care, terminal illness. It might be around making plans for the future, or the kind of admin that goes with that, which is never pleasant, but actually the more you can do up front, the better for those people that are left behind, as we were saying earlier, around care options and also around making decisions yourself and in terms of your own care and what you'd be looking for. So it's split into different sections. It's a bit of a one-stop shop. We've got some great information booklets already, but we're conscious that actually many members of the public might not know where to start or where they would find different bits of information. So we'd really hope that this guidebook will have everything in there as a starting point that they'd need.
Two things I'd like to chip in here. Number one, the paperwork, you think it's a nightmare. But in my experience, and I wish I hadn't had quite so much of it, everyone is incredibly helpful. Your worst nightmares are not actually realized. People are very sympathetic. They're not jobs worth. So,
That's
put
good
people's
to hear.
minds at rest. That, and also, I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I'll tell you why, because when you're in that situation, your mind goes into free fall. You don't know which way is up. So to have, as you've beautifully said, a one-stop shop to try and start marshalling your thoughts, it's really important, because your mind goes to like a pizza and you think, well, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And what made you go with Rough Guide? I'm dying to ask you that. Probably dying isn't the right word. But
is that the best choice of phrase you could come up
with? It was the best. My best. Yeah. Let's dig deep into. Shut up, Russell. Right. Why Rough Guide?
So Rough Guide are obviously a leader in their field in terms of travel publications and journeys. And we speak to people every day who tell us that it's a journey that they're on. And we thought, actually, this is a really interesting way of bringing it to the, to the people, to the general public in a format they may be used to. And, it sort of strikes me that when you come into the world, there are books that are given to you as a new parent. There's a guidebook. There's all this sort of stuff. You don't get it at the other end, do you? So if we could do something just to introduce that, if we could introduce some of those sort of topics through the Rough Guide, and Rough Guides have been fantastic in terms of working with them, just to highlight some of those things, some of those main topics that will be on people's minds, just to reassure them really and give them a bit of guidance.
How would you say the language within the booklets? Is it quite fluffy? Because this is obviously a very delicate subject, and I just can't help but think that sort of if it's so matter of fact, it might actually put people off even reading it in the first place.
It's a really good question, actually.
I disagree with that.
So we try and get the balance. So we are quite straightforward with our language. We speak in plain English. We try not to kind of fluff things up too much, but at the same time we're conscious of people's emotions, and we wouldn't want to scare anyone off or anything like that. So we try and get that balance right. We've got a great team who know what they're doing far more than I do in terms of writing that content. They do a great job.
Look at this. God damn. Everyone goes, oh, America, America. This is the truth. This is Julie Voice, who used to live in Houston, Texas, now lives in Guilford, Surrey, twinned with Houston, obviously. In the US, my husband was given hospice care. Not at all what I was expecting. Listen to this. He was sent home with a hospital bed, and I was given a bottle of morphine, left to get on with it. Didn't even see a nurse until he passed away 4 days later. Julie, dear God.
Isn't it? Yeah.
That is horrible.
Yeah.
That is horrid.
That's horrendous.
Crackers. It's one of the other things
we take end of life care very much for granted, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that there's a bit of that with the Rough Guide, to be honest. So I think we all just assume that everything will just work perfectly and everything will be absolutely fine, but it's quite confusing to navigate. And we work very closely with the NHS across the UK, but there are organisations like Marie Curie who can help, and they can intervene at those end of life moments. I mean, that situation you just read out there was awful and
disgusting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Matt, the other thing is that people don't know is if you don't, there's a lot more choice now. There's a lot more choice, and you can go out kind of on your own terms and have a service afterwards that reflects you.
Yes.
So if you're not religious, doesn't have to be. I mean, it's entirely up to you. So maybe one of the ways to think of it, I don't know. Have you thought about this at Marie Curie? And again, Phil and I are huge admirers of your organisation. We rarely say that because Phil and I rarely agree on most stuff. totally with this. Is that once the documentation, everything, it can be a celebration of your life. It doesn't have to be everybody weeping and wailing. And I
totally agree.
What would the person have wanted?
Yeah. that's the crucial question, isn't it? It's that sort of person-centered approach, person-centered care. When they're living, what do they want? And you talk about kind of where would they want to die? Being really plain, if they're able to, are they able to be in their home? And in a lot of cases, they will be able to. They don't have to be in hospital, sort of by themselves or something. But then afterwards, as you said, what type of service would they want? It doesn't have to be, a religious service or a typical service that we're all kind of used to going to. It could be anything they want it to be.
Absolutely. And I think for a family, it's a horrible time. It's a stressful time. It's a sad time, obviously, very emotional time. But that's a huge comfort. And it's very important to know that. It doesn't have to be Julie's horrible experience out in Texas. God.
And
I'm reeling from that, Julie. I'll be honest with you. I'm still reeling from it. Awful.
It's awful, isn't it? But I think if you get the funeral, for example, where we're talking about that, you can bring your personality through that in some way. And actually, it can be that celebration where you're playing a song that person always loved, or you're doing something, or you're dressed in their football kit, or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be what we kind of expect.
Matt, I don't know whether or not you're doing one of these back-to-back scenarios where you've got to go and speak to about 100 people, but I thought before we run out of time with you, where can people get a copy of said book?
So we would encourage everyone to visit our website, mariecurie.org.uk, and there's a free download of the Rough Guide available from today onwards. There's great information on there, as well as the Rough Guide. There's information about our support line as well, which is available if anyone wants to speak about any of the things we've talked about today. But yeah, mariecurie.org.uk for the free Rough Guide.
And can I say, may I just say this? A, congratulations on behalf of Men's Radio Station and Women's Radio. Well done.
Thank you.
And B, you're a blooming good advocate and ambassador for Marie Curie.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Not at all.
I think you're mediocre, but at least Russ.
I'll take that. It's okay.
I was impressed, but Phil sets the bar very, very high.
Yeah, I can. Right. Yeah, I take
mediocre. He advises Oprah Winfrey. Anyway, there we are. Matt, God bless.
Thank you. Take care, both. Thank you very much.
Bye. How is it going with you and Oprah these days?
What? I'm not at liberty to comment. So,
have you got your house in Hawaii? How's that going? Jesus, what a cluster! You know what that is. This is interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to read it.
Yeah, Graham Pack says, my son is a doctor, and in the last year of GP training, he took 6 months out of his training to work at the North London Hospice as he wants to deal with end-of-life care as a GP.
Well, that's where my dad ended. My pop ended up in the North London Hospice. I'm pretty sure, some of it you kind of blur out, don't you? They were magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. I want to touch on something very quickly. Well, because while it's on my mind, what's left of my mind is this. And it's a serious subject, right? A hospital and hospital staff have sworn an oath to preserve life as long as possible. I'm paraphrasing, but it's really important you know this. Their job is to preserve, even if it's hopeless, they will keep you alive. A hospice hasn't sworn no such oath, and their whole role and way of thinking is to make that person as comfortable and as pain-free as possible. And having seen this close up too often, and I wish I hadn't, believe me, I wish I knew nothing about it. If I had to choose, I wouldn't choose the hospital. They're doing their best, but they're bound by law. A hospice, if you're going to go, I'd rather go pain-free. I'm being very blunt about it, but they were fantastic to my father. At which point he didn't know
but I think everyone has aspirations. To those who do give this subject some sort of thought, they have these aspirations towards just say, and most people give the same answer, I'd just like to go in my sleep. They live in fear of what the end holds in store for them.
Yeah. Well,
and the only thing they do is that they naturally, no one wants to suffer, and who the heck can blame them?
Right.
But it's very tricky because also I struggle with where there's life, there's hope.
No, I don't. I've seen it. It's awful. It's awful, Phil. Really. People who know me know what I'm referring to. And
of course they do. But it's more about what I'm trying to guess at is you can't tar every situation with the same brush, because that's just, for example, there was a family friend of ours who was diagnosed 20 plus years ago, I think it was, with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer, if you're unfamiliar with it. And her absolute worst, and by the way, she was in her early 20s when she was diagnosed with it. At her absolute,
jeez, I thought it was like a friend of your folks.
No. At absolute lowest moment, she was given a 5% chance of surviving the night. Okay, and 20 years later, she's just celebrated being in remission. 20 years later, and she went against all odds. And I just think that if she and her family had given up then, when she was told about the 5% chance of survival, I don't think it would have been the same outcome. But never ever lost sight of the fact that had to keep going, had to fight, had to do all again. And bearing in mind, this is, even in the last 20 years, the way they treat non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is very, very different now. In those days, it was a real death sentence. In those days, it was a real death sentence.
You're bloody right.
And it's
tell me about it.
No, I know.
So Phil, think about this. Something closer to you and I. A few weeks ago, we were at a fabulous wedding. Well, I don't like weddings particularly. As a guest, I'm happy to officiate.
I was going to say, you've just announced you're a celebrant.
No. What I'm saying is, as a guest, because I don't dance, as an officiant, I'm delighted. The more the merrier. But we went to
love
this
the
wonderful...
thought. Please tell me you've put that on your business cards. Russ Kane, celebrant. P.S. I don't like weddings.
Maybe I just don't like my own. Anyway, so here's the thing. I did actually. So here's the thing. We went to this lovely wedding of a mutual friend, who in February, now we went in September, early September, I think it was. In February, she's writing out her will. She's been given 50-50 chance she's going to make it, right? 50-50 chance. She's looked fantastic on her wedding day. Everything great. And I love that when there is life. Dum esperans. I can't remember the exact Latin, but it's while there's life, there's hope. I get that. Unless there's absolutely no hope, and all you're doing is prolonging their pain, which is...
Oh, yeah. No, I agree with that.
Awful.
No, I completely, I totally and utterly get it. If there is zero hope, of course, but I worry that there are some people who give up maybe a little too easily. I'm not saying it's the case with everyone, but it's just... This is where it gets...
This is where Graham Pack's making... I'm not going to put up your joke because it's inappropriate, Graham. But I will put up this. Then you have the cases of Charlie Gard and others like it. There's been many where the parents wanted to keep the children alive against all medical reasons to keep them alive. I would not be so crass or ignorant to comment on the parents' feelings. I couldn't imagine anything more terrible than that, being put in that situation with your child. It would destroy me. Being perfectly honest, I know you're not supposed to say that as a broadcaster. It would finish me. Right? I'd never recover. So I get it. And it's all very well for the Twitterati to say, "Whoa, they should let." You're not there. You're not in their shoes. It's one of those horrible moral maze questions. There's no right answer. It's your child. You want them around as long as if the slightest miracle might happen. I get it. And then there's the practical medical side of it, where medical experts are saying, look, this is hopeless. This is never going to be resolved in a good way. I get it.
I mean, I do have to say, forgive me for saying this, that I do think that in that sort of situation, that the National Health Service has got to be allowed to turn around and say, we can't pour endless money at this one patient. Because no, I know you're going to do that. But they have to, because otherwise it could be to the detriment of people who have almost a guarantee of survival. Now, I don't believe a High Court judge has any right to turn around to someone who says that, so it's a parent, and to say to that parent that if you want to carry on privately funding this, and I think with a high profile case like that, they would have found the backing. I don't think there's anyone who's got the right to that. But then for the National Health Service, which is not a bottomless pit of money, that
apparently it is.
Well, it's not, but yeah, I can understand why. I can understand why that might be the case. But it's callous, of course it is. How can you put money above the life of someone? But regrettably, the health service costs. It's as simple as that.
Do you know what, Phil? Isn't it amazing? We couldn't find enough money to keep a kid alive, but always got enough money for a war. Always just enough money for a war. It's incredible, isn't it? Amazing.
Yeah, we've got plenty of money to extinguish life that way if we need to.
That is such a... I really hear what you're saying, and I thank God I'm never going to be in a position of power where I'd ever have to make that decision, because I couldn't. Sue Sleet up in Fife in Scotland. My dad was sent home with hospital equipment. Jesus. And the words from the hospital were, "We are sending him home because your mother insists he's going home to die." He did 6 weeks later. Sue, I'm trying to unpack that, and I'm having a bit of a problem. So,
sorry, but
was that a good thing or a bad thing?
Your mother insists on
Your mother insists he gets out of the hospital and goes home.
I mean, I insist that I'm treated like royalty. It never happens. So what a stupid thing to say.
Well, you say that. There are palm fronds all up Old Compton Street leading to the Whiskey Club. Palm fronds. And I would go, "Phil's in town," I say to nobody. Well, usually my dog. There we are. Wow. That got heavy quick, didn't it? There's no,
say,
you know the thing about
what happened to Friday being a bit lighter?
Well, here's the thing. Right? Death. It's very strange this came up, because at the moment I am writing all the copy, the text for my new website. All right. So it's put me in a very contemplative mood, especially about funerals. And I've been doing that for the last 2 days. And I was doing it this morning from crack of dawn. Excuse me. We're a radio station for mental health and well-being, and death is part of life. And there's no point in us just being silly and continuing this terrible, we can't talk about it. They're not well. No, it's called cancer. We talk about it now because you take away, how can I put this? You take away the power, the scary voodoo power of the words. Saying the word cancer doesn't mean it suddenly spreads like the flu, like your cold. It's the disgusting.
No, it's not that. I think it's because, okay, I mean, I'm not saying I think it's right, but I believe that was born out of a time when decorum reigns supreme and people just weren't allowed to be in the least bit emotional. So, of course, if you have a condition such as cancer, which is highly emotive and highly distressing for anyone, as you well know, going through it, or relatives of those going through it.
Yep.
To have a conversation in a time when people were stiff upper lip, and to some degree, some still are, but when they were stiff upper lip, and you knew that it would lead to a rush of emotions, I'm not surprised people used to shy away from it, because they didn't want to put themselves in that situation where they were getting emotional in front of other people. I'm not saying I think it's right, and now I don't really understand why people do that, but at the same time, I'd be lying if I didn't say I do once in a while. I don't really like talking about stuff like that.
Nobody does. Why would you? Nobody does. But unless
I'll be more precise. I don't want to talk about stuff like that. Maybe it's burying my head in the sand. But maybe I might be burying my head in the sand. But I don't know. I don't. If I can avoid it, then great. And I haven't.
My daughter.
For the record,
my daughter cheered me up the other day, and something was happening, and I said, "Well, I'm not going." And she went, "Oh, Dad, but time's." What did she say to me? Time is so short, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, all right? You'll get my Rolex when it's time that you're going to get my Rolex, not before, matey, not before. She's up for some huge award.
Wouldn't you prefer to see her happy?
No,
with
no, I bloody wouldn't. I'm wearing it, and she can sod off. Wear her own bloody watch. God damn it! Jeez, God, why? It was really fun. I got to tell you, so I got to lighten the mood slightly. I had lunch this week with one of my best mates, Larry Viner, and he had flown over to Los Angeles to do a eulogy at a very dear and close friend of his, huge in the music industry. It doesn't matter who it is, absolutely huge. And all the great and the good were there. And Larry had flown in to this ceremony. And he begins by saying, when I last spoke to X, I said to him, do you want to be buried in a funeral, or do you want to be cremated? And he said to me, surprise me. The place fell apart. I thought it was a wonderful way to break the mood. Even more wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. You know her. You love her. Back from China. Back from bringing entente cordiale between East and West. It is Chantal Rickards.
Hello. Yeah, surprise me. I rather like that. Surprise me is a very good line.
That is a very, very good line. I like that.
Absolutely hilarious.
Well, in the same vein, I was planning to get the HS2 to Switzerland for the end of my days, thinking that I would rather be in control of the end of my days than either a hospice or the NHS. But as there's no HS2 any longer, it could be the slow boat to China at this stage. Anyway,
Phil and I would drive you. Phil would drive you. But Phil's young. He'd be fine.
Yeah,
you put the roof down on the car. You'll be enjoying yourself in the Swiss. What'll happen is this, Chantal. Phil will pick you up. You're deciding to end it all. He'll put the roof back, and you'll go, do you know what? This is pretty good. Turn the car around. I'm going back to Wandsworth throwing a party. That's what you do. That's the only way to do it.
Oh, dear me.
Yeah, anyway, you're still here, Chantal, thank goodness. So, I mean, obviously we're doing something right so far. So
yeah, that's
and it's a good conversation to have, because people should have that conversation now before it's too late.
Precisely.
Yeah. Look, it's true. I suppose I've always been a great believer. I'd rather regret doing something than regret not doing something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a two-way street. You've got to have someone who you want to have that conversation with has got to be open to the idea of having that conversation. And I'll be honest, there are members of my family who in a million years, they just wouldn't talk about it. They'd just say, no, I'm not going down there. I don't want to know. I'm not interested. So, and it's tricky with stuff like that.
I think it's only fair to the family that's left behind, because I know as one of 6 kids, we had endless conversations bordering on arguments about Mum's funeral and where it was going to be and which denomination and who was going to be invited. And I mean, it was just a flipping nightmare. And that division was not what we needed at a time where we were all feeling incredibly fragile and, the wrong side of a bottle of brandy. It was, that stuff needs to be sorted out beforehand.
I have to say, though, that is the reason why I admire Judaism for this, though, because I recognize full well that this is not necessarily the route of conversation we're going to go down by having you on, Chantal. But in Judaism, the funeral process is actually done within 24 hours. And the idea is to try and cause minimal suffering for those who are left behind. That's one of the reasons. But one of the others is also funerals are equal. We depart this world as equal. So in other words, the service is exactly the same for everyone, regardless of who it is. You are typically speaking are buried. It's not really a question if you want to be cremated or not. It's not typically the case that one is cremated. You are usually buried. And you also find that there are no flowers, nothing like that. It's just a black cloth draped
no flowers at all.
And that is it.
Really?
And the idea being,
it's completely plain.
Completely plain. Everyone is equal.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. I grew up a Catholic, and in Catholicism, it was not deemed to be appropriate to be cremated. But clearly, that's changed massively in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I don't know about Anglicanism and whether they've been, fine about it for years. I haven't got a clue, but it does sound like a Jewish funeral is a thing of simplicity and
yes, it's very simple.
It's so straightforward.
Very
It's extraordinarily so straightforward, and it doesn't matter if you're the richest man in the world, or the poorest man in the world, or whatever. It's exactly the same. Everybody treated exactly.
And it's curious, actually. There's, as you may know, there are different divisions of Judaism. So you have the different tribes. Ashkenazi is the typical kind of Jewish person you'd find and Graham Pack quite rightly identifies as well, a standard plain coffin. Coffins are not fancy, nothing. Literally a plain box.
No,
that's
nothing
it.
At all. Plain as you like.
But I was going to say, the different tribes within Judaism do it slightly differently. And Sephardi, which is like a different type of Judaism, which is the second most common in this country, actually goes that one step further. They say that not only are we the same when being buried, but actually afterwards as well. And all gravestones have to look the same in Sephardism. So
I'm having a neon sign. I want lights, I want lasers.
I just like what Spike Milligan has on his tombstone. I told you I was sick. Anyway.
It's very interesting. You were saying, can I just get serious just for one sec? What you were saying about your family, and that you had the bottle of brandy, you got 6 siblings, everyone's arguing about what. One of the parts of my training 2 weeks ago, big section one afternoon, was how do you deal when you arrive to take instructions and there's conflict? How do you deal with it? And
what was the answer?
The answer is that if you come to the conclusion that you're not going to get any sense from that meeting, you simply say, can I simply suggest, let's reschedule. Why don't I give you some more time to think, and I'll come back in a day or two. There's no rush, and then we can take it further. Because otherwise, I'm wasting my time being brutal. Yeah. They're wasting their time, and they haven't had time to think. And it gets very emotional. So that's the one thing you want to avoid. And health and safety was a huge issue, but that's another story for another day. Right, what's come across?
For the love of God, can we lighten the mood? Do you think?
We're lightening it now, but it's
what a good idea.
Life.
In that case, what about we do this? Ah, yes, indeed. We love TV.
I like it. It's great.
Chantal, what have you stumbled across?
Well, I have to say, it's a smorgasbord this week of all sorts of different things. As you probably know, I'm not a football fan at all, but I do watch the occasional football documentaries, mainly because they're so well made. And this one is no different, and everybody seems to be talking about it, which is the reason it really came across my purview, as it were, this week. And that's the 4-part documentary series just called Beckham, quite simply.
Who's it about then?
Well, there we are. Very good question. Well, it's about more than
It's about Nobby Styles.
Oh, thank God. Right.
It's about much more than you would think. I mean, if I thought it was 4 hours of wall-to-wall football trivia, I wouldn't have been nearly so engrossed as I was. And it's not quite warts and all, because, some things are talked about in sort of veiled, quieter tones. And you think, I'd really like to know the backstory behind that. But actually, it's got phenomenally good people in, from Eric Cantona, who, as we know, is the philosopher of football, who's hilariously funny about needing to be, through to Alex Ferguson, through to Anna Winter. And you think, what on earth is Anna Winter doing in a documentary series about David Beckham? But it's actually, that shows you how wide-ranging this documentary is. Wow. And Beckham comes across incredibly well. He knows he's not intellectually the sharpest knife in the drawer, but when you see him on a pitch and you see how fast his brain works, you go, this is a cleverness of a whole different type.
Of course,
and Kosh comes across incredibly well as well. And the two of them they're great together. They're quite funny and quite spiky, so they don't take each other too seriously, which must be incredibly difficult when you've both worked at the sort of top of your own industries and you are world famous, to find that ability not to take yourself seriously. But we learn all sorts of wonderful little inside moments where there's a bit at the beginning where David Beckham talks about the fact that at night he has to go around the house, he has to sort out all the candles, and if any of the soot from the candles is on the inside rim of the glass vase that the candles are in, he has to clean them all before bedtime. He has to clean all the wax off before bedtime because he's such a neat freak.
Does he do windows? Because
exactly, he's like Mr. Window Lean. But he's obviously a complete neat freak. It's just bizarre when you find out these interesting little inside moments into somebody's life. But then
I think he has been quite open and honest about suffering with obsessive compulsive disorder, hasn't he? So
now that I didn't know, because clearly he's got some OCD.
He's got OCD,
right?
Because I think he said he has to have. It says more about me than it does about him. The tins facing the right way in a cupboard. I do.
Oh, I get that.
I don't know why.
I don't think that's silly. I completely agree with that.
I have to have everything, and the towels in the bathroom are always perfectly folded.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, you must be a joy to live with.
Oh God, the number of people who
knew that already.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Well, that's
second day. But actually, do you know what? I've had a disagreement with a friend of mine over this because when we went on holiday together, and getting quite grumpy with me for the way that I was insisting things were left in the apartment as we walked out. Yeah. And I said, but look, don't you think that at the end of a very long day, that it's just nice to come back to a nice pristine place? You don't want to come back to mess and have to sort it.
No, it's horrible.
Exactly the same way the night before. You don't want to have to get up in the morning and start tidying up. Why not just get it nice and neat? You can wake up, start a day afresh, and happy days.
I'm with you.
Brilliant. Oh.
Although,
it's worth
talking to. Hang on a second. Hang on a minute, Chantal, because Phil, we are talking to someone in the middle who, after being the most gracious, generous hostess in London, just goes, "Oh, well, the second word is off." When I offer to help clear up, I'm not saying what the first word is, and it's not push. And the place looks like a bomb's gone off. And no, she won't have it. And I said, I will stay. I'll clear up. No, not Chantal. Ooh,
no, nobody's allowed to touch my wine glasses, especially if they've had a glass of wine. I'm very particular about my wine glasses.
So we have to drink straight from the bottle.
Isn't that a bit of a chicken and egg? Isn't that a bit of a chicken and egg situation there? What comes worse, the wine glass or the wine?
Just gives a straw. Gives a straw shut the bottle.
That's why I always have to do the wine glasses the day after, because otherwise disaster will strike.
Oh.
Wow.
That's my OCD.
So that's the David Beckham documentary. Is that currently on Netflix, is it?
It is. It's a 4-parter on Netflix. I've only seen the first episode, which is 70 minutes, I think. Is a bit of a weird length. But, Netflix doesn't conform to typical program lengths anymore anyway. But it's really
Netflix has become sort of like the podcasts of television, in so much as that they're an undefined time now. So any length of time goes. It's a bit weird. I don't know how you can factor anything into your day like
that's true.
Because at least if I knew that something was an hour, I'd say, okay, well, I'd normally allow an hour for TV on this evening. I'll do it that way. But if it's a really weird number, how do you know you can afford to sit down and watch TV?
What's the matter with you? You're not
that
busy.
I've got to allow for time for TV.
Got to find time for TV.
Right, fine. Here's a good question coming in from Graham Pack. This is a good question because I know you've got lots to talk about, but Big Brother's coming back on Sunday. Oh, Christ. Does Chantal think it would be successful, or is it like Love Island and past its sell-by date should stay dead and buried? Continuing our theme of the day.
I was going to say an interesting turn of phrase given our discussion earlier on, Graham. Thank you for that.
You've just lost somebody. I can only apologise. Oh, that's so
right. It's a good question, Graham. And interestingly, I did see some trailers for it this week, and they were still talking about it as a television experiment. And I thought,
oh, please.
How many times do you have to run this experiment?
How many times did they test the COVID jab, So
exactly. This is not an experiment. And trying to dress it up. You
I
can't
just
dress
Well,
it
I
up.
think. Well, no, I think the
can't
idea behind Big
stand it.
Brother is it's supposed to be a social experiment. In other words, getting
It
different.
was 22 years ago or something.
What?
No,
but
I
I
know,
don't
but-
think
You just
can
put a
do that
load of
now.
awful people in a house and just listen to them being awful. It's
No, but what I mean is it's interesting to see how different types of people react towards one another. And you can't tell me that every year, year in, year out, they've got the same types of personality in the house.
They do.
They've always tried to get different people
course they
involved.
do.
And I think that's where the experiment comes from. I suppose it's the same kind of argument as when they're sort of conducting experiments in labs for medicine. They don't just test it once.
But you
I
know
mean-
there are going to be fireworks. You know there are going to be tears before bedtime. You know there's going to be, snogging behind the bike sheds. I mean, you sort of know what's going to come out of the experiment. I mean, yeah, different bits have been thrown together, but I don't think you can call it an experiment. I won't be watching.
No, I call it a disaster,
It's-
personally. I think horrendous.
It's repulsive voyeurism. It makes me
Yeah.
sick. I really can't bear it.
Yeah.
I can't stand all that crap. Really
never-
can't.
never
And
been
then
a
what
great
happens is somebody emerges from it, and suddenly they're a big star, and you think you have absolutely
hate
no
that.
discernible. I'm not
Absolutely
mentioning any
hate that.
names. You got no discernible talent. What are you doing? All these people are so much better than you.
No, I don't
Hey, there's a
think
very
life
exciting
in general-
program. There's a very
Yeah.
exciting program, Chantal, Rickards OBE, on
Yes.
Saturday on Channel 5 at 10 minutes
Okay.
past 7. It's called When Motorways Go Horribly Wrong. What a show that is going to be.
When
I wonder if it
motorways
does what it says
go
on the tin.
horribly wrong.
It does, because I recorded it. I recorded about a year and a half ago, and I've been talking to the producer. And he keeps saying, "I'm so sorry, we're stacked up. We've got others got to go." I don't know. Anyway, it's called. You know this phrase. I'd never heard it until Simon, the great Simon Withington, is one of the loveliest people. And again, we're putting it up as a battleship. Now, you know what that means. A battleship. In other words, I'm up against. Wait for this. Strictly, that's going to work. And rugby. Right. Thank you so much, Channel 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
The
some
pinnacle.
people-
What can I?
The
Somebody-
very
Anyway,
pinnacle
it's
of your
proper.
career has just peaked. I'm so sorry for you.
I'd forgotten
I don't know
all
how
about
you.
it.
I don't know how you cope with the pace of life. I really don't.
It's incredible what you record something 18 months ago, and then they say, "Yeah, it's ready now," and I'm going, "What? What's ready?" Simon, lovely to hear from you. What's ready? The show. What?
You should look how different Russ
did-
looks in it.
I probably, God knows what I look. God only knows. It was a hot, sunny day in August last year.
That's
Well,
bizarre.
anyway, really fun. It was great fun to do. It was huge fun to do because it was just. I always like those shows. When holidays go horribly wrong. When TV goes horribly wrong.
All right, so can you give us a sneak peek? What were you, because I know that the contributors in those kind of programs are asked to watch the footage that they're commenting.
yeah. Yeah.
So what
sure.
did you have to watch? How did motorways go
Oh,
horribly wrong?
tons. Tons of it. Tons of it. There's some really interesting stuff. Like there was a performance artist. Yeah, performance artist. Okay. And he had like a trolley, in Germany, okay. And he put 99 or 100 phones and
Red
he
balloons?
walks. This
Oh.
idiot. 99 red balloons. What was her second hit? Oh, yeah, you're right. Anyway, he's pulling this trolley across a bridge in some and of course, what it does to all the sat navs and like Waze and Google Maps, showing incredible suggestion on this bridge. The bridge was empty just for this idiot and his trolley. An idiot. Of course,
Must have been a middle of the road performer.
It was
Definitely.
very good. There was loads of other things which really just amused. They shouldn't amuse me, but you know what I'm like.
But were you there as a sort of contributing, gob on a stick, as it were, or were you
I am
the
a gob on a
voiceover
stick.
artist?
No.
Okay.
I am a gob on a stick. Yep. Gob on a stick.
Excellent.
I think that is the peak. I can't think of anything. I mean, you've got an
No,
OBE.
I can.
Surely
You've reached the dizzying heights of show business. Life will never be the same. I'm so sorry. It was nice knowing you, and it was a pleasure working. Just don't forget us smaller people when you get recognised on Sunday morning.
When I walk into the, when I'm walking through, I just don't want to be mobbed in the supermarkets. I'm so
you just
worried.
walk along the motorway in the hope someone sees you.
The original thing was when traffic jams go wrong, or when traffic goes, and the geniuses at Channel 5 decided to call it when I don't even feature on a motorway. I don't think there's any motorway in it, but they've decided, what the hell? I don't run Channel 5. Good luck to them. Anyway, it was lots of
they
fun.
contributing to Rishi Sunak's transport policy, because he probably needs a few new advisors.
Northern Connect.
I am going to number 10 later as his transport guru. Richie, mate, here's two things. Get rid of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on the Finchley Road. Get rid of ULEZ cameras. Get rid of the congestion charge. Stop it. Stop it. It's ridiculous.
Well, I don't think we should go down the HS2 rabbit hole because, well, they're not building it any longer anyway. But I still don't know why they cancelled it, because I thought they were trying to save money. But then at the same hand, they're going to spend all the money on something else. So I'm completely confused as to why it's actually been stopped in its tracks, every pun intended.
Well, very quick. The reason... 10 seconds. 10 seconds of this. 10 seconds, right? They wanted...
You're going to tell us that in 10 seconds. Get on with it.
When they started to construct, have the idea of HS2, it was to bring in Northern voters and create this phrase, the Northern Powerhouse. Okie doke, sounds like an album from the 80s. Anyway, there we go. All it was going to do, with the greatest of respect, is cut about 15 minutes off your journey. Well, everyone's got a spare 15 minutes. Get over yourself. You're not that important.
You say that. I have to go now. Sorry.
Oh, I thank Christ for that. Anyway, so the point is that it was always unaffordable. But God knows how many beautiful places they've knocked down so far.
No, but the whole point of it is unaffordable. Why are we spending the money? I mean, if you've got no money, if you're just running a basic bank account and you run out of money, you stop spending. So I don't get the idea.
I don't know for sure, but I believe the reason behind it is that they couldn't guarantee that the remaining £36 billion that has been assigned to the rest of the HS2 Northern Line will be enough. That's the bottom line. So I think what they are suggesting is that 36 billion won't cover everything that needs to be covered to make it happen. They don't know what's going to happen when they do get to the end of that 36 billion. So just hands up now, say, do you know what? Things have changed. We don't need to carry on with this. Let's reassign that money elsewhere and let's look like we're investing in lots of infrastructure. I believe.
Well, all I can say is if it's the same head of sums doing the same job on the 36 billion, I'm very much in doubt that they're going to hold it to 36 billion for the next bit. Anyway,
of course they will. It rose to nearly 100 billion. The cost rose from, I think it was originally 36, and it's now approaching 100 billion.
It is.
It's a lot of sandwiches. It is. Anyway, we can't afford it. We're a poor little country. Let's just stop pretending we're not. End of.
I know.
Right. What's good to watch?
So Boiling Point on BBC One. It's a 4-parter. Last year, I think, or maybe about 18 months ago, I told you about a film featuring Stephen Graham called Boiling Point. Yeah. And very cleverly, the BBC have turned it into a 4-part television series. Now, in episode 1, Stephen Graham only really appears at the end of it. And you don't have to have watched the film to get involved in the brand new series on BBC One. It's useful if you do, because where we left the film with Stephen Graham, he was a chef. The whole of that original film, Boiling Point, was shot in real time over what was supposed to be one service in a restaurant in North London. And Stephen Graham was the alcoholic chef, owner, manager. Everything goes wrong, needless to say. Brilliant cast and characters written for it.
Yeah,
so at the end, we see him collapsing and having a sort of nervous breakdown. So that was where the film stopped. Where this picks up is with the same cast of characters, but he comes in very late in episode 1. So different this time. But it's still the sort of freneticism of this crazy behind the scenes what's going on in a very, very high-end restaurant in London. And they've managed to recreate the brilliance of the film, the fast pace, the energy, the exhaustion levels that they're all going through. And I think they've pulled it off incredibly well. Ray Panthaki is back as one of the chefs who's a bit sort of Gordon Ramsay and is just about to boil over at any moment. Kathy Tyson is in it. It's a terrific cast, and it's really worth watching. So even if you didn't see the original film, but I urge you to do so if you can, because it's either on Netflix or Amazon, can't remember which. But pick this one up. It's on BBC One. It's a 4-parter called Boiling Point, 4 1 hours, and definitely worth watching. And you feel exhausted by watching it. Anyway, it's a good watch.
It is. Yeah,
I confess I didn't
really
see the film, so I'm not so sure. I don't know. I
really enjoyed the film.
I feel like I've got a lot of catching up to.
People were very snotty about it. Said, "Well, it's just a gimmick. You know, what you're doing is taking Scorsese's bit in Goodfellas when he goes to the club in New York." No, I didn't think that at all. I thought the characters were totally believable. Thought the acting was great. Stephen Graham is fabulous, as he always is. And you really your heart started to pound, because although it's nothing to do with you, and we're not in the catering industry, it was, as you say, absolutely exhausting. Exhausting to watch. Wow. Yes. Right. What else?
Well, briefly, I'm going to take the beginning of the Beckham documentary. Started with David Beckham going out to get honey from his bees, which is sort of rather odd because you see him wandering along in what looks like a moon suit, and he goes to get bees.
How random is that?
Yeah, but where this is taking us is to the birds and the bees, because I have watched my kids watching a program on television since 2019 that I have never really sat down and watched myself. And it was only when a girlfriend of mine who is my age, a woman I went to university with, said, "Chantal, you've really got to watch this program because it's incredibly funny." And I went, "I think I know everything I need to know about sex education." And she said, "No, you don't." So I am urging everybody to watch the Netflix series called Sex Education, which started in 2019. They've now got up to series 4.
And it is the final series.
Gillian Anderson from the X-Files, who is a sex therapist, who has a wonderful 16-year-old son, who's a lovely lad called Asa Butterfield, who was an actor I didn't know. And he is the son.
So you clearly haven't seen The Boy in the Striped Pajamas then.
Indeed. Do you know, I knew him from somewhere and I didn't know where it was.
I knew the name, but I didn't know from where.
Absolutely right. Well, of course, he plays this lovely character, Otis, who's got the mum with the embarrassing job. And it's all played out really among these 16-year-olds at a high school somewhere up north, but in a beautiful valley, probably in the Dales or the Peak District or somewhere gorgeous.
But it's very strange because the school is sort of like a mock-up of an American high school in terms of there are no uniforms. People are sort of, you can see that the building is very much based on the sort of the American high school model.
Yeah.
And yet you don't get anything like that over here. So I don't quite know where it's supposed to be. You also don't quite know what decade it's set in, because if you have a look at the decor of everything, it looks like it's 1980s, yet everyone has mobile phones. And you also can't help but observe that people eat all of these sort of like oldie sort of like, you know, like it's like pie and mash for dinner and stuff like that. And yet at the same time, everyone's gone woke, gone nuts. You know what I mean? So it's a very, very real weird hybrid.
Maybe it's a parallel universe, Phil.
It's a total parallel.
That's what it is. It's total parallel universes. That's all right.
It's definitely
you're concentrating on the wrong things in this program.
No, well, you say you say that, but I like attention to detail. But I agree. I recognise it is. It's probably the wrong.
You're thinking about the wallpaper, and the program title is called Sex Education.
What? I'm just observing.
Welcome to Phil Dave's world, everybody. That sums it up. What's the show called?
I mean, I've never seen it.
What's he concerned about? Wallpaper.
No, I do. I think series 1 to 3 are a heck of a lot better than series 4 is proving a little bit of a letdown in my humble opinion.
Well, you know more about it than me because I've literally
never seen it. Not to say.
You have seen it or you haven't?
No, I've never seen it. I've never seen 10 seconds. I don't even know about it. Never heard of it.
Even for people of our age, Russ, I think we have to watch it because there's stuff that we simply didn't know. And certainly wasn't happening in our day when we were 16.
And stuff that you simply can't unsee.
Speak yourself, Chantal, Rickards.
It is, for those who haven't seen it, it is graphic in every which possible way.
Is it? Oh,
yeah, it is. But it's very funny. It's so well written. Honestly, I can't tell you how cleverly written it is.
Chantal, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. We're flat out of time. We've been gassing away about sex education and time has beaten us. So thank you very much indeed.
And what have I learned?
And we should hopefully receive.
What have I learned? Thank you. Welcome back. I know we welcomed you back before, but welcome you back lots.
He's back on Monday. I'm back next Friday. Bye, everybody.
Oh, bye then.